Hello everyone and welcome to our podcast today, All Matters Financial. And today's subject is based on salary exchange. Our guest speaker today is Joseph Warne, head of our employee benefits team at Pareto. Joe, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Hi, everybody. So my name's Joseph Warne. I've worked in the industry for 18 years in the financial services industry. Worked with companies of all sizes, so from startups all the way to large FTSE listed companies. I've advised companies on group risk, healthcare and pensions. Whilst every company is absolutely different, my goal is always the same: help the company to create benefit packages that not only support their people, but also align with their company objectives and goals.
Great, thank you, Joe. So you mentioned salary exchange. Some of our listeners out there may not understand or know or may not have heard of salary exchange. So would you just like to run through what we mean when we're talking about salary exchange?
Sure, yeah. So HMRC actually defines what salary exchange is, and they call it's where an employee agrees to exchange part of their pay in return for a non-cash benefit. It is a contractual change, but that benefit, the non-cash benefit that I talk about, can be cycle to work, so a bike, can be historically childcare vouchers were used, and the most popular is pensions. And the reason that's most popular is following auto enrollment, 95% of most organisations' employees are in their pension scheme, so that's where the largest savings come when operating salary exchange.
Great. And you mentioned savings, so that's obviously one of the benefits. Do you want to run through what the advantages are of salary exchange to both employers and also employees?
Yeah, absolutely. So the two key reasons why a lot of companies are looking to implement salary exchange, and some already do, is one, the employee saves. So if you're a basic rate taxpayer, you will save 8% or whatever your employee contribution is. So if you're contributing £100 a month, you would save 8% of that's £8, and that's realised in an increase in your take-home pay. So why wouldn't you want that? It pays for your Spotify, your Amazon Prime, your Disney Plus. So it's a really good news message for employees at the moment. Higher rate taxpayers is slightly less lucrative because they only save 2%, but there are some advantages to higher rate taxpayers because they receive all their tax relief up gross, so they don't need to go to HMRC and reclaim higher rate tax relief, which they have to do on non-salary exchange schemes. And then the big one for companies, they save as well on national insurance contributions. So when they pay their staff, they have to pay national insurance contributions to their staff on that salary. And so when you exchange the employee contribution, they therefore don't have to pay NIC on that anymore. So they save 15%. That's recently gone up in April from 13.8 to 15%. So we are right now, companies are starting to feel that pain.
And you mentioned the increase in national insurance contributions for employers, but also the thresholds have come down and minimum wages have gone up. And the savings that can be made from switching certain policies such as pensions to salary exchange can be significant. Without naming any names, can you give a couple of examples of roughly how much someone can expect to switch over?
Yeah, absolutely. And to be clear, when we're looking at company savings, really, I will always say to a company, it's not about your savings because your employees are saving. So it's a good message for them. It's doing the right thing. But we've worked with companies where they've saved anything from 5k per annum up to £150,000 per annum.
And that's based upon number of staff and the salaries, I would assume.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the more employees you have, the bigger your savings likely to be.
Okay. And I mean, it seems like a no-brainer to me. The only person losing out is HMRC with regards to national insurance on the contributions. I would just assume that all companies are doing this, are they?
No. Yeah, so that's the kind of mystery here with salary exchange. When you look at large corporates in the UK, then yes, most of them are doing it, and that's because they've had a pension advisor and they've advised them to do that. But when you kind of look at SMEs, and most companies in the UK are SMEs, small and medium companies, probably 50% are still not doing it. There's various reasons for that, and perhaps one of those is they've not had an advisor to give them comfort and support to implement it.
I suppose the other thing, taking into account SMEs, at some point they will look to exit their company somehow. And if you're saving them, for example, £50,000 a year, if they're looking at exiting on a 10 times multiple, they're actually adding value onto the company when they do exit, I would assume.
Yeah, absolutely. And we do get asked that by companies that are preparing to kind of put themselves in the window. They're going through those kind of making sure they're tidying things up. And pensions is one of those things. They need to make sure they're compliant with auto-enrollment, but also salary exchange. So as you say, you can bring in a saving there that you can evidence in, you can have due diligence packs and that sort of thing that when you project in 10 years can be quite significant.
So, I mean, it all seems very positive. Is there an impact, any, I'm going to say disadvantages, but is there anything that employers and employees should be taking into account when they're thinking about doing something along these lines?
Yes, there are lots of complexities. So HMRC created this and they hold the rules. And so that's where we come in, because we support companies to make sure they comply with those rules. So there are lots of rules when it comes to how you operate salary exchange, how you implement it. It's a contractual change. In terms of employees and kind of questions we typically get, a lot of them will be around kind of mortgages. Historically, there's a kind of misconception potentially around how it can impact your mortgage, because you go into a mortgage broker and they'll say, what's your salary? And they'll give you a multiple. So with salary exchange, it does come off your gross salary, so it can affect that calculation. So historically, you'd have to go to your HR and say, can I have my reference pay, and show that to your mortgage broker. But whereas mortgages now are based on affordability, and as I mentioned earlier, the money that hits your bank account goes up, so you're in a more affordable position. But there are things like that we will kind of talk through. Companies need to be aware how they treat salary exchange when certain individuals might go on maternity, statutory sick pay, and that sort of thing that we help them with.
And you mentioned minimum wage. I assume you won't be able to take a staff member below the minimum wage by creating a salary exchange, is that correct?
Correct, yeah. We would look at that and work with a company to make sure that we give them the correct thresholds, or they're aware of the formula and the thresholds to make sure no one goes under. That's a HMRC rule. They just do not like anybody to be brought below national living wage or national minimum wage.
So a lot of it is about consulting with the employers, first of all, having a look at, can we make them a saving? And then looking at that saving, because I assume you can use some of those savings to further enhance their employee benefits for attraction and retention.
Yeah, exactly. So there's lots of options on the table. There's going to be company savings there. So what do you do with those company savings? A, do you pass them back to your employees via an additional employer contribution? B, do you just retain them from costs are going up? NI, we've talked about inflation, other costs from private medical, other employee benefits. You've got to kind of maintain those benefits. So it's kind of, up to the company to kind of decide how they want to do that. And we will work with them to kind of structure that.
And you'd be happy to take any calls, any inquiries from anyone listening out there at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely. Get in touch. We're more than happy to help. I mean, our support is kind of a few steps, really. First is, as you say, to help model them, make them feel comfortable with what it is. And then we will kick off and go through all the rules, make sure they understand the rules, and design then how they're going to comply with those rules. Once we've done that, we go away, draft all the communications that they will use to give to their employees to introduce it, and then we'll do presentations, because as we said at the start, it's a very good message. You're going to increase your take-home pay, and there's some additional company savings there. So it's a really good message that we work with companies to make sure they get that out to their employees.
Great. Well, Joe, thank you for your insight. Just for our listeners, would you like to summarise what you think anyone out there that's listening should be thinking of if they are contemplating salary exchange?
Absolutely. So I think we're coming through the phase now where April's just gone and NIC has gone up. So companies are feeling that pain of paying increased in NIC costs. So have a look at whether you're doing salary exchange or salary sacrifice is also known. If you're not, get in touch and we'll kind of talk you through. We'll analyse what potential savings you might have and go from there.
Great, thank you. For our regular listeners to our podcast, as this is one in a series of podcasts from Pareto, we do like to ask the random question to get an insight into our guest speaker. So if you could do anything and money was no object at all, Joe, what would you like to do?
Yeah, so I knew this question was coming. So in an ideal world, I'd set up my own company, and that company would have the best employee benefits going. So I'm talking about unlimited annual leave, lifetime private medical, daily massages, champagne Thursdays, annual trip to Augusta to watch the Masters. So yeah, that sort of thing, I think.
Well, run that by Paul Stones, please, and see if we can get sign off by the board. But if not, I'll definitely come and work for you. As I mentioned, this podcast is part of a series that we've recorded. Please make sure you subscribe and check out our other podcasts. These are on estate and tax planning, protecting your assets, retirement planning, growing your wealth, protecting your business, employee benefits, and business exits. As always, the information provided in our podcast is general in its nature and should not be relied upon without seeking specific professional independent advice. If you'd like to speak to someone regarding your personal circumstances, please feel free to get in touch with ourselves for a fee-free, no obligation consultation. Thank you everyone for your time. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.